Streaming from the Oilers Live Studio. Subscribe or follow today.
Hey everybody, it's Michael here from Oilers Live. Coming to you live. We haven't done a live episode in a really long time. So this one is going to both be recorded and put through on the podcast. We'll see how many listeners we get today, just given that haven't been live for a very long time. So thanks everybody for joining. As my guests tonight, I have got two guys that are active Oilers bloggers, as well as really good Oilers fans. I have got Ryan from EdmOilDrops. Welcome, Ryan.
Thank you, Michael.
And I've also got Eric at Eric J. Friesen on Twitter. Welcome, Eric.
Hey, thanks for having me back, Michael. I feel like we didn't do this too long ago.
No, it wasn't too long ago. I'm going to ask, it's been a long time since I've gone live. So for those people out listening, I just wanted, if you have something, if you're on the comments, just let me know what the volumes are like, the levels are like. I can adjust everybody's levels. It's nice to know we're not too loud or too soft or wherever we're at. Guys, I meant to ask you before we started. I think I did ask. You both watched the game tonight?
That's correct.
Yeah, so
Sure did.
quick rundown. Eric, your quick rundown on tonight's game.
I thought the Flames were all over them early on. They forechecked them really hard, and obviously that led to an early goal, but Oilers bounced back, took the lead twice in the game. McDavid scored another gorgeous goal. Hard to say that that's the second best goal he scored this week, but it was. And ultimately, a bad penalty cost them the game, but, sometimes I don't even want to call it a bad penalty because he stood up for himself, and Tkachuk refused to do that in his own right, so that led to a unfortunate 4-minute power play that ultimately cost us the game, and the refs missed a headshot on Kassian too, so that adds even more sting to it, but I guess all in all, an entertaining game. I'm sure you thought that too, being in the building.
Yeah, you know what? The atmosphere was great tonight. It was, there's usually, the Oilers fans are pretty loud, so it sounds like there's more there than there actually is. But I say it's about a third Oilers fans at the time. Some really good Talbot chants going and a lot of fun. For the most part, I think both Oilers and Flames fans were in good spirits and being good to each other, which is also quite nice to see. So, Ryan, your thoughts on the game tonight?
Honestly, I thought Calgary was the better team throughout, especially in the first few minutes. But the Oilers were in the game because of a ridiculous individual effort from McDavid. And let's face it, a lucky goal, Nuge's second goal, where Gaudreau got the goal. He did get the goal and the assist on the play. He slipped and gave the puck away to Yamo, and then the puck ended up going in off his skate. So, other than that, Calgary kind of ran us out of the building, it felt like. And just add on to the Tkachuk drama. Tkachuk's a piece of crap. It's a family-friendly show, so I'll keep my profanity to a limit. But, it sounds like Tkachuk's living rent-free in Kassian's head right now. He took 3 healthy runs at him during the game. The first one was definitely a headshot that was missed, like Eric alluded to. But, Tkachuk ran him again late, and nobody could do anything about it because the Oilers couldn't afford to take a penalty because they were down.
Yeah, that's a tough one, right? I'm of two minds on that penalty, right? They couldn't afford to take a penalty, but at some point, if you're Kassian, there's only so much you take, right? I mean, even the one that led to him going crazy was a little bit suspect. I mean, I guess that's it's close to a clean hit most nights, but ref will call it some nights and some he won't. I mean, Kassian clearly didn't see him coming in, right, and took the shot and just went wild. It would have been nice. I thought I thought it did kind of give the Oilers a bit of a spark in the third, though. They had a little bit more energy. They were playing a little bit chippier. It would have just been nice if they could have buried some of those chances. I thought Talbot had a couple of nice saves. Would have been nice if he did those for us last year, but just couldn't.
Talbot had a couple of 10-bellers there. One on Neal. Neal's just had a wide open net. If he gets that up, it's in, but Talbot made a spectacular save.
Yeah.
And then got Draisaitl going the other way, too.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all in all, guys, and, maybe I'll put this back to Eric. Thoughts? I mean, that's the end of our road trip right now. We finished 4-1-1. I think, you know what? Granted, it's a loss to the Flames, which to me is one of the most important games for us to win. I'm pretty happy with that road trip. We played Toronto, Boston, Montreal, and Montreal. You know what? I mean, granted, they were on a 7-game winless streak. I thought they came out flying. They were playing really well, and the team showed a little bit of character coming back in that game to win that. I thought it was a great road trip. Why I brought you guys here tonight was because you both had articles. Ryan, yours on Edmonton OILERSLIVE, your blog, and Eric, yours on the Hockey Writers, both about Benson. And so I want to talk a little bit about Benson tonight. Love the Oilers Cup there, Ryan.
Thanks.
And so, Eric, what's your thought on the team after this road trip right now? Do you think are they wanting of anything, or how's your feeling of the whole team dynamic right now?
Well, looking at where they were right around the Christmas break when they lost to the Flames, coming out of it and dropping one to the Canucks right before, things weren't looking too good, but ultimately they, were able to put together a 5-game unbeaten streak in regulation, so that was really encouraging, especially, going into 3 original 6 buildings and winning in all of those, especially the 2 toughest ones, Toronto and Boston. So there's a lot of things going right for this team right now. I think they outscored the opposition by a 2-to-1 ratio on that trip as well, so a lot of things to feel good about, but I always say I'm the eternal optimist, but when you lose a Battle of Alberta on Hockey Night in Canada, and even if that's your only loss on the road trip, it just it ends on a sour note. So I'm a little bummed out about that, but overall you have to be feeling pretty good about how this team's playing ever since Kyler Yamamoto came up, really.
Yeah, the Yamamoto thing, and that will lead directly into our discussion tonight about Benson. Having Yamamoto up and having that second line, tonight's team was not anywhere near the same team that we saw in the first game between these two. The Oilers have, I think, now a legitimate second line. I mean, Yamamoto, Nugent Hopkins, and they scored again with Draisaitl. I think they're looking good. They're doing some things really well, and quite pleased with that second line. Your thoughts, Ryan, on that?
I mean, yeah, overall, like you guys say, it's hard to be angry at the road trip. I just wish it would have finished off with a bit higher note. But as far as things we need, I think the big thing is honestly a little bit of maturity and consistency. We've seen this team play to a level that had them leading the division through American Thanksgiving. But we've also seen them lay eggs against teams like Calgary, that 5-1 game right after Christmas. And tonight they got thoroughly outplayed. I thought, like I said, a couple, if not for the McDavid goal and the lucky break on Nugent's second one, they're not in this game. Right? So what they need to find is a way to bring that high level of play more often. Right? Especially in a big game divisional battle for first place on Hockey Night in Canada.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, 100%. I think though, you're in tough on the road, right? In a barn like the Saddle Dome. I mean, the Flames, they do get riled up and ready, and the fans are into it. It's a high energy place to play. It was a big game. I don't think that they came out looking awful tonight. I thought that they came out looking way better than they did in that game. Obviously, the 5-1 game. The Flames were the better team tonight. I wonder, and you could wonder, I guess, forever, what how different it would have been if Cassian kept his cool, if Tkachuk wasn't sitting in his head the whole night. There's a few things there that make me wonder, but all in all, I mean, the defense certainly looked better tonight than they did prior to the road trip. They were a little bit steadier, although we've got to, and this is the case for a couple of years now, the Oilers have got to stop letting goals in the final minute of a period. It's once I hear that announcement, I'm at the edge of my seat, like just hoping that they keep it in the offensive zone, right? Like, it's like that. It's like going back to when the first shot went in all the time, or when, every PK there was a goal. Like, little things get into this team mentally, and that last minute of every period seems to really kind of kill us. I don't know.
Yeah, I was watching the game with my dad tonight, and it's funny, I just said to him with there must have been a minute and a half left, I said, let's just get out of this period up 2-1, and lo and behold, I don't know if it was 30 seconds later, 40 seconds later, they scored one, and just said, well, there it is. I almost feel like I jinxed them there, but, I'm sure I'm not the only Oilers fan who's been thinking that when, the clock's winding down.
Oh, so it wasn't your fault.
Really not.
It was Eric's fault, Ryan. We know who to blame. We know who to blame now, at least.
Yeah.
Okay, guys. I mean, we're here tonight really to kind of talk about a couple of articles that you've both written recently, Ryan on your blog and Eric on the Hockey Writers. And, while tonight wasn't the result we wanted, recently, Bob Stauffer said on Oilers Now that he expects Benson to come out by the 15th, right, of January, I assume. Guys,
February 15th, you thought he'd be up.
February? Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Apologies. Thanks for correcting me. I guess, I don't know, who wants to go first on this? I know you guys are kind of different opinions on this, so that's why I wanted you both on at the same time. You want to go first, Eric?
Oh, let Ryan go first. You and I are on this podcast often enough. I think he should have the floor.
All right, Ryan, you got the floor on this one. So to give you some rundown, and Ryan, please, give your blog a little plug, because I always enjoy your articles. I don't always agree with you, but you know what? That's what I love about what everybody's writing. I don't always agree with Eric either. And most people agree with me, but that's all right. And give yourself a little bit of a plug and where we find your blog, and then give us your the down low on what you think the next step should be with Benson.
Yeah, so for those who haven't checked out the blog yet, it's EdmontonOILDrops.ca. And the recent article that we're talking about, for me, was called "Time to Call Up Benson?" ? Most people seem to be of the opinion that it's time to get him up here. He's NHL ready. But I'm saying that it wouldn't hurt him to just be in the AHL for a little while longer. I don't think we're in a dire rush to bring him up right now. Because the thing that is the thing that's going with me on this one is, where do you put them, right? You got to put guys in situations to succeed. And what we know of Tyler Benson is that he's a fantastic playmaker, a very smart hockey player on the offensive end. And he's not an elite skater by any stretch, but he's smart enough to be in the right position so he can get around okay. He's not known as an excellent checker. So I don't think he's going to succeed if you put him on a third line playing 10 minutes a night with Gaetan Haas and Alex Chiasson. Right? I just don't see the point of bringing him up here to put him on a third line where he's just going to go out there and do laps chasing the puck all night. I don't see how that benefits anybody. If we really want to see if Benson's going to be ready, you put him in the top 6. Now, that Yamamoto, Nuge, Draisaitl line's been unreal ever since they've been put together, so I don't want to mess that up. So the only other place to put him is on the top line with McDavid and Cassian. Now, Benson's a left wing, so who has to come out of that spot? It's going to be James Neal. And then you got the same problem with James Neal. James Neal's not an elite checker. He's not a good enough skater to keep up with someone like a Shane or an Archibald on a checking line. And they're not going to, like, any line of Gaetan Haas's is just not going to score, period. He's got 8 points in 38 games this year. Like, he's not going to be on a scoring line of any kind. So you've basically taken Neal out of the game, except for the power play if you stick him on that line. And you've made your bottom six a lot slower because you got to take a guy like a Nygaard or a Kara out of the lineup to put Benson in. Right? So, like, I just think it's not quite the right mix right now to bring Benson up.
So if not, and I don't want to steal your thunder, Eric, but if not Benson, right, then, I mean, it's kind of widely thought that this team needs something more to get them over the hump. And so, and I think part of the argument right now is maybe that something more is sitting on the farm, right? And if it is, that's the most likely guy is obviously Benson, who's on a bit of a tear right now in the AHL. He's doing pretty well the last few games.
Was anyone who did tonight, by the way? I was on the Condors website earlier. I thought that he got 3 points tonight, but I could be wrong.
Oh, really? Yeah. So, it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, he seemed to be doing really well kind of night after night lately. He's had some nice plays in general. But yeah, no, I don't know. Eric, do you know how he did tonight?
No, I don't. I saw just some tweets coming out about the Condors, but I'm not exactly sure how many points he had.
Yeah, so he was, I know he was, I'll check online. While I'm doing that, Eric, what's your thoughts on Benson and bringing him up or not?
Well, some points that Ryan made in his post are mirror mine in a way as well.
Agreed.
I also mentioned that you don't want to split up the second line, so the only logical spots for him to play are, like Ryan said, either with Haas and Chase on the third line or have him in James Neal's spot on the first line. So you have to ask yourself, do you want to have a raw rookie coming in midway through the season going up against the opposition's top defenseman every night? And that's why I said that I think it's better to start him on a soft minutes third line. Now, he may not generate a ton of offense there, but I do think that he would add some creativity to the bottom six, and as we know, to win in this league, you need talent throughout the lineup. So having him down there on the third line, I think would give that bottom six in Edmonton a jolt of offensive punch, and you have to hope that from there he'd build his way up to playing on the first line, because I wrote, just because he starts on the third line doesn't mean he has to be there very long. He could start there for 5 to 10 games, and if he shows that he's not just treading water in the NHL, but he's actually thriving and succeeding, then that's when you maybe move up, because I really do believe that this is a player who has the mind to play with Connor McDavid or Leon Draisaitl eventually. That doesn't mean it has to be tomorrow, but it could be next year or even down the road this season.
Yeah, okay, so barring that, right, like if you bring him in then, is there any risk, like to what Ryan's kind of getting at, which is that you're bringing a guy in to bring him to the third line when he's not really a third line type of player?
No, he isn't, but I mean, Kyler Yamamoto, we didn't know for sure where he was going to play either. I think a lot of Oilers fans were very excited to see him get a shot on the top six when he got called up, and he's obviously done very well there. The thing is, Yamamoto, Yamamoto's basically been a free top six winger acquisition. You look back to the start of the year when Ethan Bear arrived in camp, it was like a free top four defenseman falling in the Oilers' lap. And, that's basically what Yamamoto has been for the Oilers recently. If they can find that again with Benson, he does prove to be capable of playing at a top six role, well, then you've really addressed some scoring woes on the wing with internal solutions. and then maybe Ken Holland doesn't have to go out and fish in the trade market coming up to the deadline here. So even though it probably would be wise for him to still be working the phones and seeing what he could bring in to improve this team for a playoff run, I think that you do have to test drive Benson and kind of see what you have in him before you make that call.
Yeah, okay. I think, and then I guess the other question is, right? I mean, we haven't seen Benson yet at all. I mean, you're right. This is just a test drive.
That's what I'm saying. Like, you should at least give the kid a run. I mean, last year I'm glad he spent the whole year in the minors because he missed so much time due to health problems in his junior career that it was good to have him stay healthy. That was a win in its own. The fact that he finished 8th in the league in points was, just an even bigger bonus. But this year, I don't think it will stunt his development to bring him up for even a short run, regardless of where he plays. I think maybe I'm wrong. Maybe what Ryan's saying is that he doesn't want him coming up until he's absolutely a stone cold lock to be, at least a second line player. Whereas I'm more comfortable even giving him a look on the third line.
Okay. I think that's that's fair, right? Ryan, your thoughts?
So my only problem with Benson on the third line is hopefully, sure, maybe he finds a way to get a few goals with Haas and Chason, but I'm not expecting Benson to come up from the AHL and be the driver of a line, so to speak. I know lots of people hate that term, but I'm not expecting Benson to be the offensive leader on a line yet, especially not a third line where their primary role is checking. Right, Ken Holland built the roster in a very specific way this summer, knowing what he had to work with. He wanted to build 2 scoring lines. I mean, the original plan was Connor and Leon, and then Nuge and Neal, which that didn't really work out all that great because Nuge and Neal have done nothing together. Right, so now we've got Neal with McDavid and Cassian, and then we got the Nuge, Draisaitl, Yamo line. We got 2 scoring lines. Great. It's the bottom 6 where we've got 2 lines that are full of guys that are PK specialists and defensive shutdown guys, right? We've got Duchesne, Archibald, and whether you put Kara or Nygaard there, either way, it's been a decent shutdown line. And then you've got the so-called third line, which I don't understand why it's a third line, even though they get less ice time. But the Haas, Chason, and insert other winger here line tonight was Gagne, and it was slow. They did not have a good night. Regardless, if you put Benson in that third, I'd be okay with Benson coming up if we could find a way to get that coveted third line center. If we could create a third scoring line somehow, whether Holland gets on the phone and acquires another top 6 winger. I think it was SPR on Twitter, Sean Patrick Ryan, that kind of threw out a tweet last week. I think it was. He suggested that if we went Neal, McDavid, Cassian, blank, Draisaitl, Yamo, and then Benson, Nuge, Chason on a third line, that I'd be okay with, because that third line actually has a chance to score.
So, sorry, what was the second line on Sean's tweet? I remember seeing that.
It was, let's go out and acquire blank left winger, and then Draisaitl and Yamamoto.
Yeah.
Right? So if Holland was to bring in another top 6 winger somehow.
Chris Kreider to whoever, basically.
Yeah. I mean, I guess then you've got some talent on that third line with Nuge and Benson. There's been a lot of people suggesting maybe putting Benson and Yamamoto with Draisaitl. Do either of you think that would work?
I'm a little scared of that just because you got 2 more rookies with Draisaitl. I mean, Yamo's proven to be pretty good defensively so far, but I'm not sure about Benson. Not having seen him play enough to really know what he's like on the defensive side of the puck, I'm a little worried about that line defensively.
Yeah, me too. I think just the idea of having 2 rookies together with such limited experience, Yamamoto's got about, I think, a little over 30 games of NHL experience, and Benson has none. That I'd probably rather have them surrounded by at least 1 or 2 veterans on whatever line they're on.
Yeah, Yeah, I mean that would be my concern too. I think that the reality is none of us really know, having not seen Benson play any NHL games, just how he's going to respond. Right when he gets, he's had moments of brilliance. Obviously I'm not. I thought I was almost dead certain that we'd never see Yamo play in the NHL at all, and he's so far he's proven me wrong. He's been adept in that second line. He's shown some really good, just some really good skills, and he's shown and he fits in well with Draisaitl and Nuge. I think that second line's been great. I mean, the idea is if you bring in Benson, though, is that that frees up Nuge to fill that third line, and so I think that to Sean's point, is that you need the only way you do that is if you get a trade somewhere that brings in a somebody that can fill that role fine on the second line, and you can have Nuge and Benson together, which maybe it might be worth looking at. I mean, and it's who knows what to say about the interesting thing would be what kind of chemistry do these guys have, right? Like nobody's played with Benson yet, so we don't even know what kind of chemistry he has. The chemistry between Draisaitl and Yamamoto seems pretty instant, I think, which is quite nice and a little unexpected. But Benson could come in and not have chemistry, or he could have tons of chemistry with whoever he ends up playing with. Okay, so I think, though, that, there's a big, the big conversation would be where he fits in. Do you guys, Eric, you're more along the lines, and tell me if I'm wrong, that if Benson does get the call up, that there's a chance that the Oilers don't need to do anything in the trade world today.
I don't want to get that misconstrued. I do want to see how he performs, because let's say he comes up and knocks it out of the park, then maybe you don't have to be as aggressive in pursuing a player that you think you'd be otherwise looking for in around the deadline, because they don't really want to part with too many draft picks, and really that's probably their best trade chip right now, because this team doesn't have a lot of parts that you want to move out anyway, or that they might or that would be able to move out. So really, they're probably looking at trading 2021 draft picks, if anything, and holding on to this year's. So I'm not going to say that Tyler Benson coming up makes it a sure thing that Ken Holland can just sit on his hands on February 24th or whatever the deadline is. I think that's it. Yeah. But it definitely could change his approach going into free agency. If do I maybe more so aim for a third line center than a scoring winger, depending on how Benson does. But I have a hard time believing if they bring Tyler Benson up that they're going to start him at first line left wing. It just doesn't seem like a Dave Tippett type move. So to Ryan's point, if he's not going to start there, then he probably isn't ready this year, and we'll start next year. I just think that with him almost being 22, I think he's learned as much as he can down there. It's time to at least give him a look. Even if he comes up and he shows right away that he's not ready for this level, well, then you send him back down. But I'm just kind of anxious to see the kid.
Yeah. So Ryan, your thoughts then? If they can find somebody through the trade, how does that, good or bad? What does that do for the Oilers trade prospects?
I personally don't think Benson should have any impact on Holland's decision making at the deadline. I would honestly be happy if Holland just sat on his hands at this trade deadline, because we're already going to be giving up the third round pick in the Lucic deal, it looks like, based on the way things are trending. And this is a deep 2020 draft, especially at the top end. So, like, even in the second round, we could still get a useful player here. It's like I'm not in a hurry to give up that second rounder and a top prospect for.
I don't want to separate with that second round pick either. I'd be much more comfortable with them trading 2021 picks.
Absolutely.
You want these players to develop as quick as possible. The kid in 2021 might still be 16, and he's not going to help the McDavid cluster anytime soon. So I agree with Ryan to that point too.
Yeah, for sure. And like after the second day of the draft of this year, I'm saying go for it, go hard, Ken Holland, make all the trades that you want, but. Going back to this past summer, what were the expectations for this team? We were kind of hoping they might make a run for the playoffs, but it wasn't an expectation in Ken Holland's first year, especially because he didn't really make much of a splash, right? Just the bargain bin bottom six signings that he made. The one trade, the Lucic-Neal deal, was awesome, but aside from that, nothing about what he did this summer suggests that he's going all in on playoffs or nothing this year. He stated that he wanted to get there, and obviously, from a fan perspective, we want the team there. From a business perspective, Kate's probably really needing to get there, right? But I think if we get there this year, it's kind of just gravy, right? Next summer, my expectations will change, but if we happen to get in with what we have, great. If we miss and Ken Holland sits on his hands and doesn't blow it up just to make a run at maybe a wild card spot or the third spot in the Pacific, only to lose in the first round, I'm going to be okay with that.
Yeah, and the expectation was, I think, that they were going to be a bubble playoff team. They were either going to make it by 2 points or miss by 2 to 4 points. So no one really expected them to be a top 3 team in the Pacific. The best case scenario that I think a lot of people thought was, they'll just sneak in and they'll end up getting beat in 5 games by the St. Louis Blues in the first round. So, I mean, that honestly, if I could be guaranteed that today, I would take it, because considering how many years we've gone without playoff hockey, that losing in 4 or 5 games in the first round is still better than not making it at all. But I agree with you. You don't want to give up too much of your future assets to just get beat in the first round this year. So,
if we were a contender, I think it would be a different story. Right, but how many of you people out there watching right now think we're actually a contender? Not me. I don't think we're close yet. Another couple years, maybe, but not this year.
So
no, and that's right. But I think the other thing is the Oilers were first place in the Pacific Division for 58 consecutive days this season. So that immediately changed the expectations in a lot of Oilers fans' minds. Mm-hmm. And after you go on that good of a run, Now the mindset in a lot of people, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but it changes from, I hope we, come close, to, no, we have to make it now. And that's just, for whether that's right or wrong, that's just how people's minds have gone.
I agree with you there, but I think Ken Holland is going to be able to step back and look at the big picture a little more objectively than that.
That's fair. But do you also, and this is maybe unrelated or related, but how much pressure do you think he's getting from Daryl Cates to say, we want those playoff revenues coming in this year, so do everything you can to make it?
I'm sure they've had that conversation, but I'm sure they've given Ken Holland enough power to be like, I hear you, but hear me out on my plan. Let's just be a little more patient. Next year, we got this.
So what do you guys think in terms of a trade target then this year? I mean, there's a lot of names that have been put out there. We're talking about Sean the Oil Knight, is a big fan of Athanasiou. Of course, there's Pajot in Ottawa, maybe Duclair. Anybody you guys on your wish list? Maybe Eric, start with you.
Well, Athanasiou would be great. I know that, he's a Ken Holland guy, right? And he drafted him. And you see people on Twitter say he's not a Steve Eisenman guy. I don't follow the Red Wings closely enough to know whether that's true or not. But if he could come in and be on the Oilers and have that scoring ability and that speed, that would be a huge boost for this team. Another name that was really interesting to me was Brandon Saad, and that was brought up, I think, on Oilers Now a couple weeks ago when I think it was Elliot Friedman said that the Oilers were interested in him. But I just wonder how true that is, or how much the Blackhawks would be willing to part with him, because they gave up Artemi Panarin a couple of years ago just to bring Saad back. So if he's that important to the Blackhawks core, you'd have to think that even if they are kind of in a retooling mode, that they wouldn't want to part with that guy. But if he was available, that would be a name that I'd have a lot of interest in.
So do you think that, and that's the kind of guy you think the Oilers are going to pick up? Is this, Brandon Saad, what's his contract at right now? He's at 3.2, and he's got one more year left, right? Or 6. He's at 6.
He's at 6, I believe.
Yeah, he's at 6. I don't know that they'd have to give something up in order to get Saad. I believe they've got 4.1 if you consider what's left in the season, roughly 4.1. So you'd have to give something up and then take him on, and he's got one more year. To me, that's a dangerous contract to take at 6 going into next year when you're trying to kind of limit your. I think Holland's done a good job myself of bringing in some low-cost guys to kind of right-size the ship with the Oilers. While it's not going to get us into like necessarily into contention for the cup. It's to me it's a good strategy, right? Like it's kind of not going full out onto a rebuild, but bringing in some guys that can get you over the hump and giving us a little bit of speed. Your thoughts, Ryan, on who might be a good target?
Well, I kind of had my sights set on Chris Kreider, but apparently he doesn't want to come here. So I'll move on from that one. I think the guys at Oilers Nation were kind of talking about a Chris Russell for Nick Bonino swap, which that was intriguing to me. Bonino's going to play more your third line center role, but I think that would give us at least a potential for another scoring line. And then that allows a permanent spot for somebody like a Caleb Jones or a William Lagesson on your third pairing on the left-hand side, which would be nice once Benning comes back too. And for next year as well, to get rid of Russell's contract and turn that into a third-line center that's signed through next year, I think that would be gravy.
So now, is that Bonino thing, is that just them suggesting that he might be a good pickup, or is there some rumors around that? I've not heard Bonino's name come up at all. So
I think that was shortly after Laviolette got fired and people speculating, oh boy, Nashville might sell at the deadline now because they fired their coach and they're not in the playoff spot right now. So I don't know how much of an appetite that Nashville would have to make that kind of a swap, but I think it's a good hockey deal for both teams because they need help on the back end right now, and we really do need a third line center.
I was listening to the Oilers Nation podcast yesterday, and Tyler Yaremchuk brought it up that Nick Bonino's wife is actually from Edmonton, and he has ties to the area. So you wonder if he would be open to that. And with the experience he has, that could be an intriguing player for the Oilers to bring in. It's just a matter of, like Ryan kind of alluded to, would they want to trade him if they're kind of back in the hunt now and chasing the Oilers for a wild card spot, especially they're going to be playing next week. So I'll be at that game as well. So I'll try and get a bit of a scouting report for you if I can.
Yeah, so Bonino's on 3 of 4 of his contract at 4.1, so that's a nice contract. He's got 25 points for the year so far. Do you think that opens up the possibility to keep Nuge on that second line then?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that, you know what, that's right. We do have a couple of listeners and people commenting on Periscope, if anybody wants to jump on there. Deemer, who is a good guy that I met out in Buffalo last year at the hockey game, he's all over Bonino. He's got a little chant going on here, but he says that the Oilers are 50-1 in Vegas odds to win the Cup this year. Is what the ESPN bottom line had. And here's something interesting. So he says, one word, Hall in the summer. Would either of you take Hall? I'm guessing Deemer's not going to like our answers because I don't think I would. I'd be a big Hall fan back in Edmonton, but maybe you guys are. Let me know. What's your thought, Ryan? Would you take Hall in the summer?
No, that's something I'm not really hoping for. Like, I personally think he's going to be asking for somewhere 10 million plus, and given how the free agent market works, he's likely going to get it from somebody. The Oilers can't make that work and expect to field a team that's deep enough to be a contender anytime soon. So, yeah, unless Hall comes in at 7 million, even then I'm a little hesitant just because of his history and how he meshed with McDavid while they were here. They did not play well together. He played great with Draisaitl. Maybe there's a elite second line there, but I don't know. I'm over it. Honestly, I'm over the Hall saga.
You're getting full thumbs down from Deemer on the Twitter feed.
Sorry, Deemer. Sorry to break your heart there, bud. But yeah, not feeling it.
Eric, you on the Hall train, or are you completely against it?
Before McDavid arrived in Edmonton, Taylor Hall was my favorite player, and I loved the guy, and it was really heartbreaking when he got traded for me, and I know a lot of people. I've never been super down on Adam Larson either, though, despite how people can say how lopsided the trade was. But still, look, Hall can make your team better. So the Oilers, I think they have to make the phone call. The other hard part is you're bringing in a 29-year-old player who's going to be on a real high cap hit, who has an injury history. So there are some downsides to doing that. But at the same time, he does make your team instantly better, and he would improve the top six right away. So I'd be curious to at least give him a call and see what interest at all he has in coming back to Edmonton. He might have just kind of said, I'm kind of done there. That's in the past now. I'm moving on, and I want to go to a place like Colorado, who has the cap space and is maybe close to winning. So I could see him doing something like that. But it's at least worth a phone call to see what it would cost to bring him back. Because if it's much more than Draisaitl is making, which I kind of assume it will be, then you just kind of say, thank you very much for your time and move on. But if you can get him at a reasonable number, which seems unlikely because this is his one big chance to cash in, but if they can, then I would definitely be interested in bringing him back. But I don't expect it to happen. Let's put it like that.
Yeah, no, I'm kind of in that boat. I think that he'll be priced out of Edmonton. Deemer thinks maybe 8.5 by 4. You'd have to make some decent moves, and you'd need some help on the cap space side. What do you guys think about bringing in like a Pajot or some of the other names out there, or Simmons, or depending on where the Habs end up, maybe even Kovalchuk has been mentioned as a possibility. Any of those names of interest to you guys? Or the other one, another big one is Toffoli's been talked about moving out of LA. Ryan, you got? If any of those guys were tomorrow were on the news as having been a trade to Edmonton, would that excite or worry you?
I don't think it would do either of those things for me, honestly. Like, I'm not overly impressed by Toffoli. He's several years removed from what was his career high, 58 points on that 70s line with Carter and the Kings 3 or 4 years ago now, and he's kind of low mid 40s for point totals now. Like, I don't know. He's good. He's a good shooter. I just don't see anything else in his game that really gets me excited. So I don't think I particularly want to spend a lot of assets to get him. Pajot is a name that I know a lot of people are excited about. Now, sure, he's scoring lots of goals this year. He skates well, plays good defensively. But I just feel like my spidey sense is tingling on this one. Like, I just don't feel like Pajot is going to be as good in any other city but Ottawa. This isn't like, there's no reason for that. That's kind of just a random thought I had. It's just a feeling I have. But I feel like whoever trades for Pajot or signs him next summer is going to regret it because they're not going to get what they are going to pay for.
Well, and the thought on Pajot is that, sorry to cut you off, Eric, but the thought on Pajot is he is more or less just a rental and a guy that'll go back to Ottawa next year, right? Like, yeah, he's pretty happy there, is my understanding. So, if you get him, it's just for a run, and then that's it. Go ahead, Eric. Sorry.
I don't know how much he pushes the dial forward. Like, how much better is he going to be than Gaetan Haas down the stretch? So, realistically, I would rather see them try and bring in a goal scorer. Like, I mean, Toffoli would be great, but at the same time, I don't know if he's signing in Edmonton this summer, so you might just get him for 25 games or less even. So, do you really want to give up your second-round pick for that? That's something that I'd really have to think about. And like we've already talked about, the Oilers are already going to lose their third, so you don't want to be picking in the middle of the first round and then not again till, I don't know, something like the 109th or 110th pick in the draft. So you really have to be smart with how you handle these draft picks going forward.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, but if we're going to make a trade for a scoring winger, my preference would be for it to happen in the summertime and to take advantage of a cap-strapped team like, say, Tampa Bay, for example, who's already up near the cap, and they'll have a goaltender that's going to get a $6 million raise this summer. So suddenly a guy like Andre Palat might bring free, right? That's a guy I'd be interested in.
So five games ago, guys, everybody in Oilers land was, well, not everybody, but a lot of people were screaming for the head of Mike Smith. I mean, you bring up goaltending. Does Holland make any moves on goaltending at the deadline? I mean, anybody would have been happy 5 games ago to have him on the block and moved out of Edmonton as quick as possible. If that were the case, do you think A, it's possible, or and B, should it be something that's done, or has he kind of played himself out of that potential? Eric, you can go on that one.
Sorry, I lost the connection for a bit there. You just came in at the end. Can you just
wow? You know what I said was brilliant. By the way, it was absolutely brilliant. And
you cut out right at the. I just caught you right at the end of it.
No, what I was saying is 5 games ago, Oilers Nation was asking for the head of Mike Smith. A lot of people. Yeah, lots of people hoping he might be on the trade block or something to get him out of Edmonton.
Well,
do you think that A, it's possible, and B, would you do it?
No, I mean, I don't think they're going to be able to move him anyway. The way he was playing before this last stretch, I think he had the worst save percentage and goals against average in the league. So they're not going to be able to move that guy anyway, especially at his age. And I think he has a limited no-trade clause anyway, if I'm not mistaken. So the Oilers would have to carry 3 goalies if they were going to try and trade to bring in another guy and then just keep Mike Smith in the press box. But that's a move that they'll make in the summer. I think that Smith is only here for this year. He's going to give Koskinen some support, and then maybe they try and trade for another younger, more talented goalie out there. I think I saw that the Rangers had their backup, Georgiev on the trade block, and he might not be the only guy that they look at, but there will be other options. And I just think Mike Smith is a short-term solution here, and like I said, he wasn't playing great earlier, but this most recent streak gives me some hope that you can count on him at least a little bit down the stretch. And there might be a bad stretch coming too, but I think he's shown that he can still stay in the battle and put in a couple stellar performances from time to time.
Yeah, so, Deems is also kind of, he's upset about the goaltending situation in general with Koskinen and with Smith. I think what I like about Smith is, he's never going to give you, 20 shutouts a year, right? But when you're in a game and it's 6-4, and you need him to save that 5th goal to change the tide, like of a team coming back, he's the guy that makes that big save, right? And for years, I've been arguing that the Oilers don't need stellar goaltending; they need timely goaltending. Right? And we've not had that. Like, when you talk about timely goaltending, it's like Talbot letting in that first goal on the first shot every game last year, conceivably. Right? It's that kind of that kind of timeliness that really puts a team down in the cellar, right? Like if you finally got a little bit going, a little bit of momentum in a game, it's 3-2, 4, could be 4-2. But then it ends up 3-3 because your goaltender lets in a weak one. In fact, Talbot did that tonight on that Nugent Hopkins goal. Granted, Talbot's had 3 good games in a year, but I think Talbot, and I got in shit for this on Twitter today because I've never been sold on Talbot, by the way. Like I wasn't sold on him the year that he won, that he took us to the playoffs, and I certainly wasn't sold on him after that. And a Flames fan was getting on me saying, he was the one that brought us to the to the playoffs, and he's the one that brought us to the second round. And you know what? I totally disagree. And disagree with me or not, but I've not been big on him. But for me, it's all about timeliness of saves, right? And Smith gives you that. I don't mind. He was their best player, the Flames' best player in the playoffs last year. So I certainly, but I don't think after this year, I think we got to do something about goaltending. I'm not sold on Koskinen either, especially after tonight.
And notwithstanding Connor McDavid, I would say that Talbot was probably the most valuable player the year that they did go to the playoffs. So we might disagree on that. But at the same time, he did have enough poor performances that the Oilers, I think, had to eventually move on from him. So, yeah, tough to see him get the win against us tonight, but I guess that's just how it goes. Well, it's not the first time a former Oilers come back to bite us.
So Deemer says something good, which is we ran Talbot into the ground, and I agree with that, right? Which is Talbot to me is a hell of a backup, and he's always been. He's maybe one of the key backups in the league, and as long as you don't have him playing too many nights, then he'll give you the kind of performance. Rittich, don't get anybody wrong. He's still their starter in Calgary, right? And Talbot's come in and done a very capable job the last 3 or 4 games. And what's his name? Their new coach there is ridden a hot goalie. I thought we should have ran Smith tonight, for instance, but that was a weird move for me. Ryan, you got any thoughts on this?
As far as the current goaltending situation goes, like I agree with Eric on this one. Like I don't see anybody lining up to get Mike Smith in a trade. Not at his age, not at his cap hit, and not with his save percentage where it's been the last little while. But I don't think he's totally washed up yet. Like we've seen that he can go on stretches. It's just like he's inconsistent, right? Which can be problematic when he's not playing at his best, but he's still really good if he's playing solid. It's like, I think we saw it in the playoffs last year, how good he was. And like having a veteran presence like that is going to be a good thing coming down the stretch. And if we do happen to get in, then it's a good thing to have, whether he starts or not in the playoffs as well. Going forward, again, Smith's not coming back here next year. That's plain and simple. I think we're better off to look to the free agent market to get a career backup, someone that's done it for a long time and knows their role. Either that or, like Eric suggested, Georgie Avett in New York. Like he's a great young goaltender. Like I remember he came into Edmonton, what was it, last year, 2 years ago now, and just absolutely dominated us. But that'd be interesting, but probably expensive at this point. But I'm fine with the current goaltending. It's not elite, but I think it's good enough for now. But I'd wait to address it in the summer.
So this is we're running into a stretch of games here, which I think really determine a ton of what happens for the Oilers. We play the Flames again, of course, at the end of the month, and then St. Louis. But importantly, we're playing both Arizona and Calgary. Tonight was a big loss, right, in terms of standings in the. We could find ourselves a long ways out of a playoff spot already, given how tight it is. If we don't come out the next 4 games, or on the flip of that, we could find ourselves back on top of the Pacific. And then we play Calgary again on the 1st, right? February 1st, right?
Gotta have those 2 games, I think.
Yeah. Like how big, and then we're back in Arizona. So these next with the exception of St. Louis and Nashville, although they're both Western Conference teams, we've got Arizona and Calgary twice in this next little stretch. Probably the most important part of our season to date. And so my guess is by February 5th, that indicates kind of where we're at. If you guys, and I like to do this, as Eric knows. I mean, if you could if you're pulling the trigger on trades, are you doing it right away, or are you waiting to see where we're at after February 5th?
You're doing it as soon as you can, because the more runway you can give yourself with these players, the better. I think that Holland kind of telegraphed it a little bit in a recent interview. I'm trying to remember who put it out, but they basically said that Holland wanted to said where we are in the standings will dictate whether I'm a buyer or a seller at the deadline.
That was before Toronto, I think, was that interview. Okay,
so he sounds pretty content to wait until close to the last minute to bring someone in. But it never made sense to me why teams want to wait till the very last hour to make a trade, unless they're just bargaining and trying to get the best possible deal. But I say, if you have a player in mind and the other team is willing to move the player, try and get that done as soon as you can to give yourself a chance to really, get this going now. Why are we waiting until there's only 16 games left in the year and we can do it when there's 35 games left?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm on board with that. Yeah, your thoughts, Ryan?
I would say, hate to run into a situation where we spend money or spend assets on somebody now only to go into a little bit of a losing streak and then end up missing the playoffs. And now we're out assets and we didn't even get the desired result. That's the other argument I can see for waiting. The other reason is that now, I remember last year I was doing a bunch of articles involving the salary cap, and while I learned a lot, but I also made a lot of mistakes with that. I think part of it is because of salary cap implications. Like, it doesn't cost as much to take the player on the closer you are to the end of the season. So of course the cap hit is the minimal, like as low as it can possibly be as you get closer to the deadline. So I think that's the other reason to wait. But like I said, I'm going to be perfectly happy if Holland decides to sit on his hands.
Yeah. So I think here's where this, original chat about Benson comes in play. Right, we've got some guys on the farm that who knows what they bring to the team. Right, do we try Josh Curry again, or do we call up Colby Cave again? Do any of those guys make a difference on this roster in the interim to get us through this next little phase? I think, as I said, like if we go. All of our games up until the 13th of February, the 8th of February are all Western Conference games. And, Nashville, it's an interesting year, right? Because Nashville and San Jose, we actually play a couple of, we play Nashville twice, Arizona twice, Calgary twice, and then we play St. Louis and San Jose, and then we're in Chicago. There's not not a one of those is a gimme, right? Like this is a tough stretch of games. It's a good mix of home and away, and then once we're done on the 11th, we go into Tampa, Florida, and Carolina, and Boston.
Doesn't get easier.
No, it's not. This is a rough part of the schedule right now. And I think, if we don't know by February 5th where we're kind of sitting, we're certainly, it's going to be really, really obvious by February 20th where we are in the playoff race. If we can get through that stretch, that Tampa, Florida, Carolina, Boston stretch, even if you win two of those games, and by the 20th, and it's the 26th is the deadline this year, February 26th. That's the only time we kind of get a bit of a break with Minnesota, LA, and Anaheim before we go into Vegas on the deadline. So, this is really the toughest stretch of the season, I think, in terms of, and we're right in the mix. Tonight really hurts now when you look at that schedule ahead of us. We've got, I kind of think that, my feeling tells me that we need to do at least something, like even if it's a small little trade, or call, maybe Stauffer's saying Benson by February 15th, maybe Benson by, January 15th, which was my first comment in error. But I think we got to do something kind of right away to give ourselves a shot. I really think this, you can't even go 500 right now, right? With it being so tight. Remember early in the season, we were saying, well, if we get to this stage by Thanksgiving, then we just need to go 500 for the rest of the season. We're not there, right? Like, I think the teams that are going to end up in the Pacific, that are going to end up in the playoffs, are going 600 the rest of the way, right?
It could. I was doing the math earlier. I sent a tweet out based on other teams' point percentages. And I figure before tonight, the Oilers needed to go something like 20, 15, and 1 in their final 36 to make it. So they one loss off there now, so they can basically maybe afford 14 more regulation losses this year, and that's it.
Jeez. So anyway, my thought is, we need. I get what you're coming at, Ryan. Like, you kind of want to make sure that you aren't wasting any type of prospects or anything in the mix. Mike Dursa says, call up Benson, see what you have in him. Bringing up Yamamoto has made a big impact. So I think what he's kind of saying is along the lines of. Which is what we were talking about earlier, maybe. So now, having a look at that schedule, Ryan, is there anything in you that says maybe bringing up Benson's not a bad idea? Or, like, if we're not going to make a trade? I mean, does that change your mind at all?
I mean, I'll be clear and say, I'm not going to be upset if Benson gets called up. I just don't see the panic and needing to do it right now. I think the good news about the schedule is that the Oilers have this way of playing to their opponents. So, like, they tend to show up against teams that are good, and then they tend to be awful against teams that are low in the standing. So I'm more worried about that Minnesota, Anaheim, LA section you talked about than I am the rest of it.
Yeah, but fair enough. That's a fair comment. If it wasn't true and it doesn't show. Dash 824 says leave Benson down for 2 weeks. And so that's kind of maybe the Stauffer comment. Another 2 weeks, kind of get through this.
Yeah, I don't see it happening until after the All-Star break. Like, how many? We got 3 or 4 games or 5 games left before the All-Star break.
Yeah. What do they release the votes early? Is Nuge even in the running for that?
No, I saw that earlier. Quinn Hughes won the Pacific spot.
Oh, okay, it's done. There you go.
Yeah.
He already announced who the 4 extra players were, so
okay.
He didn't get it.
Well, Quinn Hughes is deserving. That kid's going to be a good D-man. All right, guys. Well, you know what? We're getting late. We're kind of a little bit past the halfway point in the season. I want you quickly to kind of close off, and we'll shut down for the night. But what's your thoughts on where the Oilers are at, and are they? If you had to, Deemer says they're 50-1 odds for the Cup, but what do you give them in terms of chances to make the playoffs this year? Maybe start with Ryan. I've been starting with you, Eric, all night. Ryan, your thoughts on where they're at, and your thoughts on whether or not they're going to make the playoffs this year.
I mean, if you just told me we'd have been in this spot at the start of the season, I'd have been totally happy with where we are right now. Again, the roster's not perfect. There are flaws, but I'm totally happy to wait until the summer to make trades to try to fix it. As far as odds for getting in the playoffs, I put it at a little less than 50-50 right now, but it's close to that 50-50 mark, only because the other teams in the Pacific are kind of the same boat we are. No one's really lighting it up. Like, there's so many teams that are so close. And like, on paper, we might be the weakest of them all, but we also have Connor and Leon, so you never know.
Yeah. Before you go, Eric, there was a couple of fans behind me tonight that, which I will never get this chant. I didn't get it in Toronto. I don't get it in Calgary. Like, you don't know hockey if you're chanting McDavid sucks. Like, I don't, on no level does that make any sense, or does that make you seem smart or intelligent at any level? And so to the guys that were sitting behind me at the Flames Oilers game tonight, you're idiots. Like, come on. It doesn't, there's like, nobody's chanting it with you if they're smart, if they're hockey smart. So anyway, go ahead, Eric. That's my little rant.
It's just pure hatred. I mean, I lived in Calgary for school. I know people there. It's just a reality of the fan base. They hate anyone who puts on that jersey. So it doesn't matter if it's Wayne Gretzky, Mark Messier, Connor McDavid. As soon as you play for the Edmonton Oilers, they hate you. If he played in any other random American city, they wouldn't care about him one bit. So it's just because he's an Oiler that they're chanting he sucks. So I try not to take too much credence into that. I give him about a 60% chance to make it right now. I think a little better than 50-50 odds. They are better than I thought they would be at the midway point of the season, or just at the midway point. So I'm pleasantly surprised with what we've seen so far. At the end of the day, they're still in a playoff spot. They had a great road trip. I'm still feeling optimistic as much as it was disappointing to lose tonight, and I'm really excited to see them play a couple more games before the All-Star break, and hopefully.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, the game tonight was disappointing. We all agree on that. But if they had gone 4-1-1 and lost to some other team instead of the Flames, we'd all be joyous, right? Like, the fact that it's a loss to the Flames on the road trip is a little bit more hurtful, and it hurts us in the standings. There's no doubt there. But I thought that despite the Flames being the better team tonight, and which pains me to no end to say, I didn't think that the Oilers, they had a better effort tonight than they did in the last game. I thought that they, they certainly had their chances. It wasn't like they didn't have their chance to, tie this one up. There are a couple things in that game that I was, quite pleased about. And I'm still really excited about this team when I see Connor and Draisaitl playing well on two separate lines. Draisaitl's finally got a nice line going, and I think to your point before, Ryan, like to split that line up would be a travesty right now. You can't, they just seem to have that knack. Deems is saying that we were robbed in Buffalo. I know Deemer was in Buffalo, so yeah. I even had a buddy that's a Sabres fan says it seemed a little bit odd to call that a penalty. Guys, did anybody get a chance before we call it a night here to hear? I keep seeing on Twitter the Tkachuk's Kassian's comments on Tkachuk. Anybody hear what he had to say post game on Sportsnet?
We can't stay on a family-friendly podcast.
All right. Well, you know what? I'm going to see if I can't pump it into the audio here. If you guys hear it, don't say anything. I'll let you know when it's over, because the people live will be able to hear it, but those people. So this is from Sportsnet. And it's from their tweet that says, Zach Kassian had some strong words about Flames Matthew Tkachuk after tonight's Battle of Alberta. So I'm going to play that right now. Let's hear what he has to say.
If you're going to hit like that, you have to answer the bell every once in a while. Like, it's especially 1, 2, 3 in the game. He got me in the third. He followed me in the corner, right? Like, he's clearly trying to target me, which I like. Like, I'm standing here. I love that stuff. I wish we could play him in a day and a half in like a playoff series, right? It was fun for me. We lost the game. It sucks, but all in all, he's just a young punk that has to figure that aspect out in the game. It's sad 'cause he's a pretty good player, but he's a to be honest, straight up. That's the definition of it. He wouldn't fight me 2 years ago. Said I was a fourth liner. Now I have 13 goals. What's the excuse now? You know what I mean? It is what it is.
All right. Well, I absolutely love the comments there. Cassian calling. Oh man, calling him a young punk. I don't know. Were you guys able to hear that?
Yeah. I love Cassian even more now.
Yeah. No, that was.
The only thing is, there are already people talking about if he gets suspended for what he did, shot on the ice and beating him down. But I'm wondering if in today's climate, if he gets a fine even for things.
Oh, you're breaking up a little bit, Eric. I don't know if Ryan can hear you, but you've had a lot of static tonight.
Yeah.
It's kind of been in and out, but that's all right. I think we get the gist of what you're saying, and absolutely love Cassian coming out and saying that, and also the part where he says, you know, I love that. I love that style of play, and you know what he says to Tkachuk, he says he's a good player, right? But he's a bit of a young punk, and he's right. And if I would be worried that Cassian gets some type of a suspension out of this, but at the same time, if they're going to give Cassian a suspension, they should look at that headshot, is my feeling.
Yeah, it'll be worth it for him having to getting a couple shots in on Tkachuk.
Yeah. I absolutely. You know what? That was, to me, like, I've watched that more now than Connor McDavid's goal.
Get more pleasure out of it, too.
Yeah. I keep watching him just swinging, and somebody did a freeze frame of Tkachuk's face on the first thing there. It looked to me a lot like and I did a tweet about it, a lot like the calf roping at the Calgary Stampede when he's like spinning him around. I was waiting for him to sort of lace him up and kind of finish him off. But you know what? Tkachuk at some point in the day has got to answer the bell. I just can't believe that the guy can sleep at night. You know, and Cassian even said, he said, I'm not going to fight you because you're a fourth liner, and now Cassian's on the top line. So what's his excuse now? It's a bit of a joke in my mind. So, we've got, I think I've lost you both. Have I lost you both? You still there, Ryan? Oh, wow. Well, there you go. I think this is, that might mean the end of tonight's pod. I've got Ryan on freeze frame there. I want to say thanks to everybody for tuning in today. Kind of a funny way to end it, and at the same time, not a bad way to end it. Talking about, the Cassian beatdown of Matthew Tkachuk. Wasn't the result any of us wanted today, but I think that at the end of the day, you know what? There's more to come for this team, and we should know. I think by February 15th, we should have a good idea of where this team's going to be. Anyway, thanks everybody. Thanks for tuning in, and have a great night.
Oilers Live.